こんにちは。ハリケーンフットボールです。今回の教材は、マインツの佐野海舟に関する動画です。ワールドカップ関連の動画で YouTube も溢れていますが、日本を特集する動画も何度も扱っているものの、佐野海舟について触れられることの少なさに、私自身もかなり驚いていました。そんな中、ワールドカップとはあまり関係のないプレイヤー解説の動画として、マンチェスターユナイテッドファンのチャンネルが佐野海舟を取り上げています。もちろんワールドカップでの活躍で、移籍の話が大きくなるだろうと予測しながら作成したものでもあるでしょう。佐野海舟を簡単にまとめた良い動画だと思いますが、佐野海舟の過去の法的トラブルについても最後に触れており、良い選手だけにいつも少し悲しくなってしまいますし、チャンネル主であるスカーレットも同じように少し残念そうに話しています。実際にどのように話しているのかチェックしてみましょう。
Welcome to the Scarlet Report. At 6 a.m. this morning, I made a post on my X account promising you guys that I could introduce you to a proper hidden gem, a midfield destroyer, a proper number 6. Mine's Japanese midfielder Kaishu Sano. A hell of a player, but a player that comes with a lot of baggage, so stick around until the end of the video to find out why. Without further ado, let's analyze. This analysis video is going to be centered around how a player like Kaishu Sano helps and enables his team to dominate the midfield through a plethora of mechanisms. And here we're going to start by showing his ability to read and anticipate and intercept the ball by using footage from this 1-0 win from Japan against England. So here we have a situation where Sano is, of course, coming in front of Kobe Mainu. Then Kobe Mainu is able to find a pass through the midfield line of Japan towards Cole Palmer. But then Cole Palmer here with a missed touch, a missed control. And then Sano is the first player to react. And then he dances around Phil Foden. I mean, no wonder Cole Palmer and Phil Foden were not picked by Tuchel. I think this game had a lot to do with it. And then he's able to move into space in order to receive the ball. Now in this sequence right here, a build-up phase for England, and then our own Kobe Mainu is trying to break this, out-of-possession shape that Japan has. So now he's thinking about a pass that would actually bypass those lines, but then as you can see, Sano is gonna intercept that ball again with his superior ability to read the game, okay? Now, same thing here. Again, this is an attacking phase for England, and then Sano is scanning, trying to understand and anticipate what the player is going to do. And then now this is the moment he understands that the ball is most likely going to come towards Kobe Mainu, and then that's it. He's the first one again to react, and he's able to intercept the ball. Again, these skills that Sano is showing in these pieces of footage can be backed by the data, because he is actually in the top percentile when it comes to defensive contributions in the Bundesliga amongst midfielders, especially when it comes to recoveries and interceptions. He's also great when it comes to ground and aerial duels for a guy who's not that big. I mean, he's 177, I think, 176 centimeters, but he's extremely effective, and he knows how to use his body well in intelligent positioning and movement. So this is another example right here. That's Elliot Anderson right there, again in the build-up. So he's going to try to move into this area right here in order to kind of break, again, that out-of-possession shape that Japan has. But it's not going to work with Sano, because there is Sano, and then get out of here. That's it. He just wins that ball. What is also great about Sano, I mean, this season he had no red cards and only one yellow card. Again, which shows that he's a player who is not only effective at winning the ball, but also at winning it cleanly, which is an extremely underrated skill in a defensive midfielder, because defensive midfielders have to commit a lot of tactical fouls. So then again, it just shows that he's a very clean and composed player. So here again, this was against Strasbourg. So in the Conference League, again, he's analyzing the game, trying to anticipate what Strasbourg are going to do with the ball. And then as the ball comes towards Valentin Barco right there, again, Sano is first to react. As you can see, plenty of examples of his ability to read the game and to anticipate. Another thing that is extremely important in a defensive midfielder is his ability to defend these half spaces. They are some of the toughest areas to defend, and a lot of teams in the Premier League, the likes of Manchester City and Arsenal, they are so good at exploiting the half spaces. That's actually how they penetrate into the defensive third. And so having a player who is aware of that risk and also effective at, plugging those holes is extremely important. And here Sano again, he kind of knows that that's the play that Strasbourg are going to do, and then he's able to intercept the ball and then clear the ball effectively while keeping possession in his team. Sano is also amazing in defending transitions. That's extremely important right now. I've already talked about how Michael Carrick anticipates that football is headed towards doubling down on transitions. A lot of managers, including Luis Enrique and Arteta, have realized that football is a game of fine margins. So transitions are going nowhere. In fact, more tacticians are going to use them. So it's very important to have players like Ederson and potentially someone in the mold, the same profile as Kaishu Sano, who are able to defend in transitions. Here, England towards Rodgers right there, and then Sano is of course first to react and again keeps that position. The ball does not go out of field. Same thing here again. A counter-attack after Strasbourg collects the ball in from a corner. And then here, as the ball comes towards Enciso, Sano positions himself in order to be able to execute a tackle, wins the ball. But what I like about this is that he's got a little bit of Dimitar Berbatov in him. Of course, not as elegant. But then here, of course, he wins the ball. In that same sequence, finds himself in this area here. Look at those quick feet. Amazing. And then a pass back. That could have been a goal for Mainz. Again, it reminds me a lot of those quick dribbles from Dimitar Berbatov, albeit not as elegant, of course. But here's another thing that I love about Sano is just he is extremely combative. Okay, he is a warrior in some sense, and he takes no shit. So here, for example, this is Enciso right there, tackles him, wins the ball. Fine, great. Okay, you think it's over? That's it. Sano is gonna accept that. No, he won't, because then Enciso turns that into an attack, and then Sano now quickly recovers. He is tracking him back, and then look at this. This is just absolutely amazing. Just shoulder on shoulder. That was not a foul, by the way, and he's able to win the ball. But I just love that drive, that sense of pride. Okay, so you tackle me, you win the ball. It's not over. I am going to hunt you down and win the ball back, and that's great. And those are qualities that we don't really have currently in the Manchester United midfield. And Sano is also great at turning, defensive situations into attacking transitions. So here he does have decent ball carrying ability. Actually, he's quite good at dribbling. Not really, again, the most aesthetically pleasing, but he's actually quite effective at dribbling. He's able to spot these kind of passes and these kind of through ball opportunities, as in the case here. So again, quite a useful player in transitions. Now, one thing that we need to talk about, obviously, is in the build-up, in possession. That's something that a lot of Manchester United fans care a lot about, and I agree. I mean, rightly so. It is an area that is extremely important in modern football tactics. Well, here's the thing with Sano. He's not really the best passer. It's just not his game. He's not someone who's going to come deeper into these areas like, Mateus Fernandes, for example, or Bruno Fernandes, or Vitinha, or Modric, or Scholzi, or whatever. Come and collect the ball, lift his head, and then act as a quarterback with those long balls into the wide areas. That simply isn't his game. He's more of a short pass type of player. But it doesn't mean that he's not effective in the build-up and in progression. How does he do it? Well, let's analyze. So Sano is actually a great team player. He understands the power of the collective. So he actually uses a lot of 1-2s, and I'm going to show you plenty of examples there. So here he comes in this area right here, into this space, in order to collect the ball from Suzuki, but then he knows immediately he's going to go back to the right-sided center back for Japan. Good. Okay, you think the sequence is over, nothing impressive about this. But check this out. This is absolutely amazing. So he moves into Kobe Mainoo's blind spot right there. And then now he knows that he needs to make a third-man run. What a third-man run is when a player makes a run, even though he's not the intended target to receive the ball. So basically, there's a first pass, and then he receives the secondary pass. So here, as the ball goes towards a player who's not in the frame yet, he actually now moves right behind Kobe Mainoo into this empty space right here in order to receive the ball. So effectively, he had that first 1-2 and then a second 1-2. So with constant dynamism and movement and these 1-2s, by leveraging the collective, leveraging his teammates, he's actually able to progress the ball in a very effective and also intelligent manner. Here's another example again, great in the duel, so he's able to win the ball. But then again, in order to progress, he doesn't just dribble. Again, he's going to use one of his teammates with a 1-2. There you go, 1, 2, and that's it. Valentin Barco cannot touch the ball, and then he can progress the ball. And then here he finds himself in this situation, and guess what? Just an amazing Captain Tsubasa style finish into the top corner, great goal, and a wonderful player. So in a nutshell, Kaishu Sano is a perfect option if you're looking for a number 6. Great at anticipating the play, interceptions, very strong in the duel, very good ball carrier, and he's a very good combination player as well. In a midfield market that is filled with technical number 8s, I think a profile such as Kaishu Sano is quite scarce, thus valuable. But now we need to talk about the tough part of the video, because everything I've said about Kaishu Sano so far is positive, and for good reason. I think he's a brilliant player. But many of you are going to be wondering, well, what's the catch? Well, as many of you know, I live in China and I work in China, and I do have colleagues from all over the world. And one of my colleagues is from Japan. And so at the end of the workday, right next to the elevator, he was there. And so I met him. We had some small talk. And so he asked me, he was like, yo, Scarlet, he knows that I have a YouTube channel. What is your next video going to be about? Are you going to be covering the World Cup, yada, yada? And then I said, funny that you should ask that, because I think my next video is going to be about a Japanese player. So he goes like, oh, Ao Tanaka, because I've told him that I highly rated Ao Tanaka. And I was like, no. Actually, it's Kaishu Sano. And he goes like, wow, amazing player. But right after that, he made like a really funny facial expression. So I was feeling like there was a but. And I got really excited, because I was thinking maybe he's going to tell me something that I don't know about Kaishu Sano. Something that only a Japanese football fan would know, because they follow their team way more than I do. Maybe he would tell me something like, okay, in an obscure World Cup qualifying game, Kaishu Sano was actually not that good, and he was responsible for Japan dropping points or conceding goals, etc. Okay? But to my surprise, he didn't say that. What he said is that, well, I don't know if you know, but about 2 years ago, Kaishu Sano had an episode with law enforcement in Japan. And I was like, what? Law enforcement? And then he went like, yeah, sexual harassment and assault. And I was like, what? Come on, guys, for God's sake, what is it with football players and sexual harassment and assault? Can they act like regular people? So that actually happened like about 3.5, 4 hours ago. So literally in that 5 minutes between that conversation and me getting in my car to actually commute back home, I just had to check it on my phone, quickly Google it, check a couple of Reddit articles, a couple of X articles. But why am I sharing this with you? Because to me, this is beyond the scope of what Scarlet Report is about. Here I only talk about football stuff. There's a reason I did not talk about the Mason Greenwood situation, for example. It's just that this has just been brought up to my attention. And I feel that if I don't mention it in a video about this player, then to me that is intellectually dishonest, okay? So it just feels right to tell you that right next to the Kaishu Sano name, there is an asterisk. There is a box that says potential red flag. So what I'm trying to say with this video is that by focusing on Kaishu Sano, the player, well, I can highlight his qualities, and he's one hell of a player. But then again, if in the next couple of weeks, especially if he shines for Japan at the World Cup and Manchester United get interested, especially with Christopher Vivell and his influence on recruitment, his network in Germany, if Manchester United start looking at Bundesliga wonder kids and they start contemplating, making a move for Kaishu Sano, well, then Manchester United will be forced to not only look at Kaishu Sano, the player, but also Kaishu Sano, the man. And when that day happens, then we are probably going to have a completely different conversation.
次は解説です。今回も少し聞き馴染みがなさそうな表現を主に解説していますので、本日の解説をチェックしてみましょ
う。Through a plethora of mechanisms.
プレトラは非常にたくさんの豊富なという意味のフォーマルな単語です。メニやアロトフよりも知的で分析的な響きがあります。スポーツ分析ではアプリトラオフオプションスやアプリトラオフメカニズムズのようによく使われます。ネイティブのサッカー系 YouTube や記事でも品質する単語です。少し難しいですが覚えておくと解説動画の理解が楽になります。
Through a plethora of mechanisms, that football is headed towards doubling down on transitions.
ダブルダウンオンは、さらに力を入れる、方針を強化するという意味です。もともとはカジノのブラックジャックで掛け金を倍にする行為から来ています。現在ではビジネスやスポーツでよく使われます。動画ではサッカーが今後さらにトランジションを重視するようになるという意味で使われています。批判を受けても自分の方針を変えずに推し進めるというニュアンスを持つこともあります。
that football is headed towards doubling down on transitions, that football is headed towards doubling down on transitions. I think a profile such as Kaishu Sano is quite scarce, thus valuable.
スカースは不足している、希少なという意味です。単に少ないというだけではなく、需要に対して供給が足りないというニュアンスがあります。動画では佐野海舟のような守備的ミッドフィルダーのタイプが市場に少なく、そのため価値が高いと説明するために使われています。サッカーの移籍市場やビジネスの分析でもよく使われる単語です。ラールと似ていますが、スカースの方が不足感を強く表します。
I think a profile such as Kaishu Sano is quite scarce, thus valuable. I think a profile such as Kaishu Sano is quite scarce, thus valuable. But many of you are going to be wondering, well, what's the catch?
What's the catch? は、何か裏があるのではという意味の会話表現です。良い話や魅力的な提案を聞いたときに使います。動画では、佐野海舟について高評価が続いた後で、では欠点は何なのかと話題を切り替えるために使われています。ネイティブは日常会話で非常によく使います。映画やドラマでも品質の表現です。
But many of you are going to be wondering, well, what's the catch? But many of you are going to be wondering, well, what's the catch? Kaishu Sano had an episode with law enforcement in Japan.
ローエンフォースメントは、警察や捜査機関などの法執行機関を意味します。ニュースや報道でよく使われる表現です。動画では、過去に警察沙汰になった出来事について触れる際に使われており、単に警察というだけでなく、警察との関わりが生じた件というニュアンスでも使われています。ポリースよりもフォーマルで、やや広い意味を持つ言葉です。英語ニュースを読むなら覚えておきたい表現です。
Kaishu Sano had an episode with law enforcement in Japan. Kaishu Sano had an episode with law enforcement in Japan. Then to me that is intellectually dishonest.
Intellectually dishonest は、知的に不誠実なというと、少しわかりにくいですが、単なる嘘ではなく、重要な事実を知りながら意図的に無視したり、公平な説明を避けたりする場合に使われます。単に嘘をついているというより、都合の悪い事実を分かっていながら無視している、公平に議論していないというニュアンスです。論理的に誠実ではないニュースや評論で時々見かける上級表現です。
Then to me that is intellectually dishonest. Then to me that is intellectually dishonest. And they start contemplating.
Contemplate は、熟考する、じっくり検討するという意味です。単に think about というよりも、時間をかけて真剣に考えるニュアンスがあります。ビジネス英語では新規投資や事業拡大を検討する場面でよく使われます。フォーマルで知的な響きを持つ単語なので、ニュースや分析記事でも頻繁に見かけます。上級英語を目指すなら覚えておきたい重要語彙です。
And they start contemplating. And they start contemplating.
いかがでしたか？佐野海舟のわかりやすい特徴をわかりやすく解説した動画だったのではないでしょうか。未だに世界的にはバレてない状況であるのが明らかであり、海外に来たちも佐野海舟に注目している人がほとんどいないのが不思議なくらいですが、やはり佐野海舟の良さがなかなかわかりにくいものなのでしょうか。オランダ戦でも直接的に良いプレーをしたというわけではなく、特にボールをコントロールする役割は鎌田太一が行い、佐野海舟は非ポゼッションでの働きが多かったでしょうから、オランダ戦でも見つからなかったというのが現状でしょう。それでも間違いなくこのワールドカップで確かな働きをしてくれるはずであり、さすがにバレる才能だと思いますので、試合をこなしていくにつれて、どのように佐野海舟が世界に認知されていくのかも楽しみにして、まずは次のチュニジア戦を楽しみたいと思います。本日もご視聴いただきありがとうございました。またすぐにお会いしましょう。